All right. Thanks a lot for being here today, everybody. This is Bullying Prevention Podcast number 13. Thanks for being here, Mr. Alden Moody. We appreciate you being here again for our podcast.
Of course. Happy to be here.
Yeah, thanks for being here today, sir. Now, what we're going to cover today is going to be one of my favorite topics, which people don't cover a lot, is bullying adult to adult. So when you're, over 18, you graduated high school, how adult bullying happens. And what we'll talk about to start off with is, since you're in college, about bullying between teachers at an adult level. You got teachers that are professors and you guys in college, and how that actually happens. How would bullying happen there? And the difference between bullying and teachers that are just not good teachers.
So there's a few different levels going on there. When you have a teacher, especially a professor, there's an age difference. A lot of professors tend to be much older than their students, and they have this given authority, right? They've been given the title as teacher, and they've been given authority over a classroom of students. They've been given pretty much godlike powers to decide who passes and who doesn't pass.
So
generally,
we've met one requirement of bullying. They have an imbalance. I'm writing this down, of power. So they do have that for sure, right? A professor automatically has an imbalance of power between you and them.
Oh, yes. The moment you walk in, heck, they could be younger than you. You could be going back to college at 56, and you could have a 30-year-old professor, and already that title already makes them up here compared to you. You're like a little scrub compared to this person.
Sure.
Have the exactly.
Well, they determine your grades, right? So it doesn't matter if you're older than them. Sure.
They control the social power and the actual physical control over you in a way, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So there's that, and then there is, if we're talking about bullying between a teacher and a student, there's a variety of ways that could be done. It could be kind of humiliation, right? So if I'm a teacher, and let's say you ask me a question, it could be legitimate or it could be kind of a dumb question, and a teacher could go, "We just went over that.
Right.
Were you not listening? Were you not writing anything down?" And this could be, even from the teacher's point of view, this could be like a legitimate, like you could just have this frustration. You're not necessarily trying to attack this student, but maybe you did cover it. Maybe you think that this is the correct, this is how you're going to teach the student how to do it. What really happens is you're humiliating them in front of their entire peers.
Yeah.
And again, this could be just a bad teacher, or it could be a teacher that is actually intending to harm. Like usually when we're talking about bullying, especially when it comes to kid to kid, peer to peer, there has to become bullying. Usually there's an intention to harm, but here it could be a little grayer in those lines, right?
Yeah, I guess it's interesting you say that, because there's so many times. I remember being in college and even in training and other adult training or in a manager employee situation, automatically there's an imbalance of power. You've automatically got that happening. So 1/3 of one of our 3 bullying prevention requirements is happening. And what you said is exactly right. Is it an intention to hurt, or is it just bad communication or bad teaching skills? And sometimes it may be intention to hurt, and then that's a different thing. If it's bad communication skills, I guess as the student, you got to just live with it. That maybe I'm being embarrassed, I'm being humiliated. It's because the teacher's bad. They're just not a very good communicator. But sometimes these teachers kind of get power. They get power, or they get
they get a little overzealous,
or they get their own personal reinforcement. They like it. They like making the students feel bad. Or managers, when we're talking adult to in the workplace, a manager might like the power. They might like to make their employees feel bad because it makes them feel good.
Mm-hmm.
You see this with people with that aren't very well developed, and they have, sometimes with people with personality disorders or some other issues, they might want to make other people feel lesser, and that's an intention to hurt. So that there's some reasons why this might be intention to hurt.
And so they're at the first level of morality at that. What's that one guy? Yeah. You know what I'm talking. You know what I'm talking about.
The first level of morality.
It's the first level is you're not doing the correct thing. Second level is you're doing the correct thing, but only because people expect you to. Third level of is the stage of morality or something like that. Very smart guy wrote it, but
Okay.
but anyway,
We'll look that up. We'll add that.
yeah,
We'll
yeah.
add this.
We'll have to add that later. Anyway, and then we get to the second level of bullying. So after the imbalance of power, which is, remind me what exactly that is called.
Well, imbalance of power, intention to hurt, and then it's whether it's repeated over time.
There you go. Repeated over time, which is the third part. Intention to hurt is that second part. The repeated thing. So this could be a teacher who repeatedly does not, or grades hard on your papers unjustly, repeatedly refuses to see you in office hours, or refuses to give you good advice, repeatedly humiliates you in front of the entire class. And and this happens, and I've seen it happen, and not all of it's with intention to hurt sometimes, but a lot of it is. A lot of it is just, you're bitter, and you don't like this one student, or you don't like all of them, and you just keep doing it.
Yeah, I guess you could be bullying all the students. I mean, it could be the type of teacher or the type of manager. I think this is really important because it could be in a work environment. The manager could be bullying everybody. It could be repeatedly embarrassing, humiliating, sending messages, and not being a very good manager or being a very good educator to everybody. And if their intention is to hurt, it's different. I guess the thing is, let's talk about solutions in a little bit, but the solution, if they're just bad at it, they're bad, they're not doing a good job because that's how they were brought up, and
they're not necessarily trying to hurt the other person, but they are, right?
Yeah,
that's what we're talking about.
Yeah, if their skill set is so limited that they always sound like they're embarrassing somebody, and they have such a limited skill set that that's how their professor talked to them, that's how their manager talked to them. They're very or that maybe they've got other problems in their own life. You know, they've got, you know, horrible life at home, they're getting divorced, their whole family is family's going terrible, and they don't have any money, and they could have all kinds of other problems. And so when people ask questions and they're in a bad mood, they snap back at them. So managers could do that too. That doesn't mean immediately it's bullying, although it's this thing. If it's repeated over time, it's probably not. They're just having a bad day, right? Teacher comes.
That's not bullying. That's just snapping at someone, which is a problem, but it's not bullying.
Yeah, it's a different solution. It's a different problem than if a manager's doing a bad job, or a manager's having a bad day, a professor's doing a bad job, professor's having a bad day. Professors don't always get as much training on how to be a teacher and how to educate people as they could.
Yeah,
we know that because that's, their part of their job is research. So, and same with managers. Managers don't always get the support they need to be managers.
Of course.
So if it is bullying, though, it puts the person getting bullied into a conundrum, because now, how do I fix this when it's my boss? How do I fix this when it's my professor?
Yeah.
When we were talking about kids, you had somebody to go to, which was your teacher or your parent. But if it's your boss or your professor, who do you go to?
And it could be like the department lead, or it could be the manager of that manager, or something like that. But sometimes there's not those cases, right? Sometimes it's just, that is it. That's the highest you can go, right?
Well, one of the situations, I'll give you a couple scenarios. One situation, let's say you're working for a small company, and the person you're working for owns the company. Who are you going to report? Who are you going to complain about bullying to? You could complain to the human resources director, but the person that owns the company is the one that's bullying you.
Yeah, you're given not many choices in that regard.
Yeah, and even if it's a more hierarchical company where the manager has a manager, if you go to the boss of your boss and they don't handle it well, so you go to your boss's boss and they don't handle it well, you're kind of at risk, and now your boss is going to be upset with you.
Mm-hmm.
From then on, if you go to your boss's boss and the boss's boss comes down and yells at your boss because they're not necessarily handling it well, oh boy, now work is going to be really pleasant.
It's the consequence of like, I don't want to say snitching, or telling the truth to the next level up, right? Because then there are consequences, right?
Yeah, and it's not always easy. One of the things that I think that is yeah, let's draw that out. If you have a boss's boss, and you, this is not always an easy situation. And this could be professor, this could be the dean, something like that, in student, like in a college situation. This puts you in a really difficult situation. Now, here's the secret to this, and the secret is that it's not a secret, that this is a complicated situation. We don't have a magic pill for this situation. That's where a lot of times we get asked this, well, okay, so what do I do? And people want us to give them like a 1 or 2 line answer, and there isn't a 1 or 2 line answer.
One size fits all, sort of, just bare bones. No, it doesn't work like that.
Yeah, is if we have a magic script, you can go to the dean and say, well, here's the thing I need to tell you, and that's going to magically tell this guy to tell the dean to tell the professor to act nice, and then the professor is going to automatically act nice to all students from then on. If I had that, we could solve all the world's problems. We'd have world peace. It doesn't work that way. That'd be pretty nice.
That would be very nice.
Yeah, everything would be great.
We'd make a lot of money off that too.
Maybe, or we'd all be like chill and regular.
Yeah, I know.
They'd probably could make a lot of money off that too. But it isn't realistic. Now, what could happen is, now, don't get me wrong, we do recommend, if it gets severe, obviously we would like to be able to talk to the professor, but in a bullying situation, if they're truly intending to hurt, if my manager, here's the manager, the boss, if the boss is truly intending to hurt, then this is very difficult to do. The movie Horrible Bosses is a good example of that. Mr. Moody, I know you remember that.
I actually was thinking about bringing it up, but I'm glad you did.
Yeah, it's not a PG-13 movie for us to play a clip from for this show. But if anybody's listening and they've watched that movie, that would be a good example of horrible bosses. None of those bosses could have been reasoned with or discussed with, because it's bullying. So what can help everybody from this is understanding the difference between bullying and maybe miscommunication and bad management. Is it bad management, bad teaching, miscommunication, or is it bullying? If it's bullying, this is where you have to, first you can identify it and not identify it wrong. In one of our earlier podcasts, we talked about the difference between bullying and conflict. It's conflict if there's not the imbalance of power. Now, you could have imbalance of power with it, but if it doesn't have the 3 characteristics, imbalance of power, intention to hurt, and repeated over time, if it's not those 3 things, then you're better off, because it's a conflict situation, as long as the other person's reasonable, which may or may not be true. There's situations that may not be true. I mean, if it's your boss, you may have to just do what they want because
they have authority.
Yeah, you may not agree. Your professor, if you don't like the assignment, it's too bad. But if it's conflict, it's a different strategy. So in this case, is it bad communication? Is it a miscommunication, or bad? Let's call it this. Better way to say this. Is it bad skill set? Maybe the manager just has a bad skill set. That's not your job as an employee to fix. You can't fix that. It's not, sorry, that's not something you can fix, but at least you can identify that and then work around it. If my manager has a bad skill set, you get a different job if you need to, but you can then understand that and work around it. It's not bullying. If it's a miscommunication, that's something you could work with. Is it bullying? Then we know maybe I have to do something else. That's the first part of resolving the situation. Which of these boxes does it fit in? And then I can try to figure out what to do. The problem for many people is, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, and I think you would agree with this. One of the major problems and why this is so complex and complicated is that many of the time, especially in work environment, like a professional work environment, or you're in school and you have a professor, it's not necessarily something you could just walk away from.
Sure.
You
could be your
you
dream
may need
job.
the income. Yeah, it could be you got the, whatever, working for Tony Stark, I don't know, whatever you're doing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you can't walk away, or you don't, or this is it. This is what you want to do. Or you're a student and you're taking a class and this is the only professor who teaches that class and you need it to graduate. You're stuck there. And that happens a lot. There's only one professor who teaches a class and you got to take it. So you suck it up. It's so much. It's because in a school peer to peer, it's you can diffuse and you take that person and you go away, but you can't really go away.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. In one of these built-in imbalance of powers, and you may also be realizing you're stuck there. That's why it's important to know what, at least first level, is it they have bad skills, it's a miscommunication, or is it bullying? If it's bullying, then at least then I can try to figure out what the next step is. Now, what would I do if I go talk to the boss? Now, when we were talking about kids, we talked about the difference between tattling and telling. Believe it or not, this applies here too. If you go to your boss and say, hey, I've got a whole bunch of a bone to pick with my direct boss, or the boss's boss. If you go to your boss's boss, or you go to the dean of the college and make a big scathing report about your professor, that's going to get your professor in trouble. That's going to get your boss in trouble. They're not going to be very happy with you. So you have to be very careful about how you approach this. And I think the tattling versus telling thing is really important. Am I trying to get help for myself, or am I trying to get somebody in trouble? And I know I was talking about kids when I talked about this before, but I don't know about you, Mr. Moody, but when I talk to adults, most of the time when I hear them complain about other people, they want to get the other person in trouble a lot of times.
It's not necessarily something serious is going on. It's just,
it could be that it's serious or not, but when they're mad, they want to tell me why the other person's a jerk. They don't want to just try to get help for themselves. Truthfully, if it's bad skills or a miscommunication, have at it. You can probably tell somebody that they're a jerk or that they're not very good. But when it's bullying, especially, they were intending to hurt you. They actually were trying to do so. If you really have identified that they were trying to hurt you, you have to go to the person you're trying to get help from, and you have to try to get help. So you have to get help. Your main objective is not to ask them to get them fired. Your main objective isn't to get them in trouble. Your objective is, boss of my boss, I'm having trouble working right now because of these reasons. I would like to have some help in my current work environment. Well, what's going on? This is what's going on. I'm having trouble with this. So now it's an I statement. I'm having trouble. Then at least you'll have more of a shot, because you weren't going in trying to get the other guy fired. You weren't going in trying to get them in trouble. And it still may work that way, because what you can't control is that the boss's boss isn't also a bad manager and beats this guy up and goes and yells at him. It's unfortunately something you can't control. You can do the best job you can. Same with the dean. You don't know that he's not going to come down and bully this guy, bully the professor, and get him in big trouble. So it's a delicate situation. The best thing to understand is complicated situations, which is this, are going to have complicated solutions. Don't expect it to be a simple solution. Step one, figure out what the actual situation is. Is it the three things? Intention to hurt, imbalance of power, obviously is, and is it repeated? So you can confirm that it's bullying. And Or is it one of these other things, bad skills, miscommunication? If it's one of the other things, handle it differently. If it's bullying, then make sure you tell, not tattle, like we told the kids. I know that sounds a little sophomoric because we're talking about adults, but make sure you're just communicating with trying to get support and help for yourself. Anything to add there, Mr. Moody? You've been a great help on this.
No, not in particularly. But, well, I would like to say, like, let's go back to earlier. Let's say you're in a small business and your boss is running the business and they're in charge. You can't really tell on somebody. So what would you do in that situation? What would be one of the things that you could do? Not necessarily the thing that would always work, but one of the things could work potentially.
That's a great question. So you've got a boss and you. This is a scenario. It might only be you. It could be a two-person company. It's the boss and just you're working for a boss, and that's not an uncommon situation. And this guy, look, I've been in this situation where I've been the boss, and this is a very stressful situation. That doesn't forgive somebody for bullying somebody else. First thing we do is communication. Is it bad skills? A lot of times it's bad skills. This person doesn't know how to be the world's best communicator because they're worried about making lawn furniture or whatever the company makes. So understand which of those boxes is it and what should I do? The rule still applies. When you go to them, you ask for help and support, not complain. Help and support. I'm having trouble doing my job and I'm struggling at work because of this. What I would really like is this. I need some help with this. It changes the communication pattern with the boss versus I can't stand it anymore that every time I come to work, you complain that I'm late, but I'm not late. You said that I was late by 2 seconds. Again, watch the Horrible Bosses movie. One example of that. If you can stand that movie, it's kind of a little bit.
It's a little bit on the risque side.
Yeah,
but it has a lot of really good examples of unescapable situations, almost
unescapable bad bosses.
Yeah, unescapable for a variety of reasons, right? I mean, one of them is the small business one. One of them is one of these, and one of them is a more of kind of a threatening blackmail sort of thing, and the other one is, it's situations that you can't get out of, really, and you just want to. And in that movie, they don't solve them very well.
They do not use the best.
They do not use the best solutions.
They try to spoil a little bit.
They do try to kill their horrible bosses.
Right.
Luckily,
they don't. It's not for kids, so we don't recommend it.
For kids, don't watch it with little Jimmy and Sally.
You could watch Office Space, which
you could watch Office Space, but don't watch Horrible Bosses. But if you yourself are of the age and you want to see examples of terrible human beings running things.
Now those guys wouldn't have. You could do anything you want with them, and they're
unreasonable.
Right.
You could not go to them and say, well, for again, a variety of different reasons. The bosses are bad in their own different ways. It's not like cop cut and pastes or anything, but yeah, it's bad, right?
Yeah, and I'm gonna say this again because it's worth mentioning. Complex problems require complex solutions. So nothing that we're showing on the podcast or going to be in our book or anything like that is gonna be a simple solution to a complex problem. People try to do this. People want simplicity. And I understand that because I like simple solutions. I like to give you guys a cookbook. Do this when somebody's bullying you and it would solve the problem every time. It doesn't work that way. And that's
got 2 cups of niceness and
yeah, exactly. Right.
Yeah.
And it doesn't work. We want to make sure that you understand what to do. But the best shot you have is ask for help and support and be in that kind of language instead of I can't stand it when you do this and you do that and you do this, because that puts people on a defensive nature. You've got to change the communication pattern you use with people so that you can hopefully have your best shot at keeping them from bullying. Now, if they're really truly intending to hurt you, intending to cause problems, this is a decision you'll have to make. That's one of your other options, which is to not work there anymore. But as Mr. Moody said, it might be, maybe it's your dream job. Maybe it's the only type of job. Maybe it's the only place you can get a job in that location, and you want to live in that location. So there's a lot of reasons we understand why you may need to stay at that job, and it may be ideal in every other way. So it's a difficult decision for you to make. That's not as easy as just quit the job if the boss is giving you a hard time. So we want to help you solve that problem.
Of course. And this help and support when you're going to your boss is, once again, a diffusing action.
Yes.
You are not going and escalating this. You go in guns blazing, say, I can't take this anymore when you did blah, blah, blah. Rather, go in there, like you said, I have a trouble with this specific thing. Completely different reaction. People will be much more willing to help you, even the people who are bad communicators and bullies, in this case, your boss, right? Because yeah.
Very good. Very well said. All right. Well, with that, we can kind of finish up today. I think this has been a really good podcast and a really good summary. All the other stuff that we podcasted about in bullying applies here in the adult situation. We wanted to take some time with the adult bullying to be a little bit more specific because of this very common situation of imbalance of power. Now, one of them that we didn't really address too much, we ought to talk about a little bit. This can happen in peer-to-peer situations. And it can also happen within social groups. There could be social groups at organizations, within church groups, within not that church groups are that bad organizations, but I was just thinking of a group of people within clubs, within
any organization that would ever exist could have
any group of people.
Oh
yeah, any group of people. It can be a husband and wife, a couple. I do a lot of work with couples, and one of them can have an imbalance of power because maybe they make more money than the other one. So now it wouldn't be the boss and you. It might be in the couple situation. It could be the highest the income earner and the no income earner, and that puts an imbalance of power here because one person earns more money and the other person is in an imbalanced power situation. Doesn't mean they want to leave the relationship necessarily, but it just means that there's an imbalance of power. So this model has to follow in all these cases. Now, of course, if you can get mediation from a third party, that's also a helpful situation. So I would recommend that in some of these scenarios. But this can be in any kind of group, in peer-to-peer. And so a lot of the things we talked about in the kids section of our podcast, in our writing here that we're doing in our book, is going to apply in adult bullying prevention. And we can certainly expand on this a little bit later. Anything else to add before we wrap up, Mr. Moody?
No, not particularly.
Okay.
But the only thing I guess I would add is that, unlike peer-to-peer, when we talked about kids, it gets a little bit more complex. Like you said, when you get older, when you're now an adult, bullying is now happening when you're an adult. And even in peer-to-peer situations, it doesn't have to be boss to it could be your fellow coworker who's maybe a little bit more experienced or popular than you. And it still could be the same situation where you can't leave.
Absolutely.
You can't leave. Yeah. And it's not even your boss that's the problem. It's your fellow coworkers, and maybe they just don't like you.
Yeah, with a kid situation, in theory, there's always other parties that are managing the kid, which is a teacher, your parents. There's always governing third parties that ideally are supposed to watch out for you. So,
and in those situations, those teachers who are supposed to watch out for you kind of have even more power than like your boss when you're at a job. Because, you got unions and whatever, but you tend to have a little bit more power when you're an adult employee rather than a child who's bullying another child. Mm-hmm. Right? Because the teacher can go, okay, you're going to ISS, you're going to timeout, you're getting expelled. Can't really do that with like adults. You know what I mean?
Yeah, the levels of consequences can be different for kids. And in nowadays there's some argument that kids can't get the level of consequence that they used to be able to, and it's changed over time. But at the same time, you're exactly right that with kids, in theory, there's this shell that's governing the kids, whereas with adults, it's kind of a free-for-all. And built in is almost always this imbalance of power. Even if you're let's say a consultant and you're an independent contractor and you're self-employed. So you're self-employed independent contractor, you don't report to anybody, you're your own employee. Well, guess who? What? You've got people that you contract with, that you consult with, and they could absolutely bully you, because now if you don't get the work done in time, even though they want stuff that wasn't in the contract and they're being completely unreasonable, what are you going to do? You want to get their business, and they could abuse you. There's all kinds of stories about that. So adult bullying can happen in lots of different ways, in lots of different situations. And my mom was a nurse, and she could tell stories about the doctors. And she was a nurse. She was born in the 20s, so she was a nurse, would have been in the 40s. And so can you imagine in that day and age, doctors were not that they're not high status now, but in the 40s, it was a big difference in power, and doctors just ordered nurses around whenever they wanted. So there could be a lot of bullying then, gender difference and status difference in that situation. So it was quite a difference there. So there's a lot of scenarios with adults that the complexity of the power dynamics can be huge. And then what do you do? And again, complex solutions require complex problems require complex solutions. And we're not, unfortunately, solving all this today. But hopefully in this podcast, we've illustrated how to break down, is it bullying? Is it a communication issue? Is it a bad skills issue? And in all my work with couples, a lot of it's really bad skills. A lot of it's bad communication. A lot of it's bad skills. Most of the time, truthfully, people aren't intending to hurt. But if it is, then you have to use different strategies. So now,
conflict resolution rather than
conflict resolution will work, but that conflict resolution will work if it's bad communication.
Mm-hmm.
Conflict resolution will work if it's bad skills. Conflict resolution strategies won't work if it's bullying, because now the other person doesn't need to resolve the conflict because they have an imbalance of power. I'm your boss. I don't need to resolve conflict. Just do what I say. So the conflict resolution won't work then. So what you need to do is hopefully get some third party. And if there's no third party, then you're, as we talked about, you're kind of on your own. So in that case, you do the best you can to try to get the bullying to stop, and you've got to work with that person yourself. So it's a more challenging situation. It's like if you're a kid in school, somebody's bullying you, and you've got to only deal with that kid. It's a very difficult situation.
And you can't just punch them.
And you can't punch him, and you really can't. You can't punch him in any.
Not especially when you're an adult.
It doesn't work in any of these situations.
It does not.
Even though that's what we train people to do, and sometimes people talk about that fondly, like they think that would solve all your problems. It would make things worse. We teach a whole bunch of people how to punch really well, and it would work in times of serious injury or death. If that's the case, that's what you do, but not in these cases, because it wouldn't work.
Nope. We teach self-defense. We do not teach aggressive attacking.
Aggressive
as
attacking
a first step. Yeah. No.
Yeah,
we don't teach that, because that would be. It would just be bad. It just wouldn't work for anybody, right?
Yes,
not you or the bully.
Yeah. All right, sir. Well, thank you very much. Right. I really appreciate your time today, and great job on this podcast. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Have a good one.
Okay, sir. Bye-bye.